Hey everybody, welcome back. I am Bowen Belmer and you're watching Float on Air. This is episode 7. Sorry we took a week off last week. We had a lot going on with Float. Very big announcement at the onset of this week's episode. I will not spoil it right now, so stay tuned to hear about that. And we will give you an inside look at the latest happenings within Float. And as always, we will dive into the history of airships with Nick Rogers. Stick around. This is a really good episode, and we appreciate you joining us as always. Cue the music.
For over 200 years, we have chased the sky. Gravity has tested us, but it has never defeated us. You're listening to Float on Air. Lift off, float on.
We are back. It is Float on Air. It's episode 7, and we actually have huge Float news over this last 2 weeks because we did miss an episode last week for good reason, though. Ryan, where are you sitting? Can you just fill us in on where are you sitting and what's going on here?
Yeah, I'm sitting in our new office in Southern California. So really excited about it. We moved in last week. So we have engineers coming in and getting desks set up. I think the onboarding task is going to be every engineer has to build their own desk. So
like a teamwork exercise.
And there's no teamwork. It's they're given
your own desk, you build it.
They're given a screwdriver and a wrench, and they have to put together their own desk. So.
Yeah, absolutely. So of course the big news there being that we have our first physical location for Float, which is both a office space and then also a fairly large warehouse space that will grow into over time. I want to show. I do have a couple. Let me see if I can share them. I'm not sure what the easiest way. This is just a very short clip. So you can see the outside. And then, I was panning over. Right across from where we are is the headquarters of Saleen, who is a supercar manufacturer that this actually was their space. But this is our space. And actually, just before this was, there you go, some mandatory supplies. Let me share a couple more really quick here just so people can get a feel for what our space is like.
What a great view you've got. Couldn't be anywhere other than California, could it?
Oh, it's beautiful. Yeah. And Ryan was not joking about building your own desk because here we have our guy, Ohm, slowly assembling some of his own space. And there we go. This was our workstation on day 1. It is humble beginnings, you guys. Literally starting out working on the floor, which is the most startup culture thing that I can possibly think of.
Graduate to beanbags next.
But that's right. This is what it takes, though, right? I mean, and this is part of why we're doing the docu-series. This is all just a little bit of behind-the-scenes look, on Float on Air. But how do you start an aerospace company from the ground up? I keep using the line, and I think it'll actually end up being the title of the first episode of the docu-series, but you have to start somewhere. Here, this was a look at the warehouse space, which is fairly large and, may eventually house the first, hopefully, will house the first Floatcraft. Just so you guys can get a scope of how large this is.
It's a big space.
It is definitely a big space. A lot of room for us to grow into. There's actually, you couldn't tell from the clip, but you'll see in the docu-series, the office space is fairly large as well. There's actually 2 levels right on top of each other, so a ton of room for our engineering team to grow into it and kind of go from there. Ryan, is there anything else you want to touch on just with the move into the new space?
No, it does take time to get set up and get the team here and situated. So. Yeah, it's a process.
Yeah,
it's interesting because as you say, Bo, what does it take to start an aerospace company? But even lots of modern aerospace companies are either spun out of existing companies or mergers, acquisitions, something like that. You guys are starting from the ground up with, as we've seen, not even desks. So it really is a proper.
We do have desks now. Just to clarify, there are desks as we sit today. Yeah.
So yeah, completely different kind of challenge.
Yeah, this is starting from scratch. And this is what it looks like to start from scratch. It's not It's not pretty. It's it's a lot of scrappiness. It's a lot of just figuring stuff out, and that's what we're doing.
Yeah.
We're we're modeling everything ourselves. We're 3D printing everything. We're building everything by hand. We're ordering materials. We're doing everything from scratch. We don't have existing machine shops to work with. We don't have existing suppliers or government contracts or parent companies helping us. We're we're legitimately, doing this as though it, started in a garage. So
Well,
it's going to be a process.
you've got your concept and you are willing it into life.
Yeah. So we'll see. We'll see how the universe receives willing things into existence here.
I just think the more we learn about airship history and just aerospace history in general, we're doing what the founders were doing way back. These people were building ships in their barns at, like, a lot of times on their own properties, flying it themselves. Like, they were really going to first principles to do it, which is exactly what we're doing, and it is exactly why I'm so confident that we're going to figure it out. I think that you need like a gritty edge to really like make something new sometimes, and I think, and this is not like meant to call out other airship companies, I think spinning off of another major company has held people back, not helped them in a lot of ways.
I feel like you need a certain obsessiveness, and that's what definitely the old pioneers had. They were obsessed with this. They had to do it, and they wouldn't be satisfied until they at least tried. So yeah, you definitely got that same spirit.
Yeah, I look at it. I can't remember who the quote is attributed to, but if you want things that others don't have, you have to do things that others don't do. That is like exactly the type of philosophy basically that we embody so far, which is it's been good. So we will keep rolling, and there will be updates along the way. We're doing the whole docu-series so people can follow along. You'll get to meet the team, hear some interviews from people working on everything, and you'll see kind of how it really grows over time, because we even have a handful of people who are already signed to be joining us but haven't started quite yet, but will be very soon. And so yeah, onward.
Exciting.
In terms of history though, Nick, let's pick up. I guess let you tell me where did we last leave off, and where do you want to pick up?
Well, we have spent most of the episodes so far talking about really two countries, France and Germany. And those two countries, they were at the forefront of aviation, really because of, like, I guess the geopolitical rivalry between them and the shared border, the historic distrust. One of them saw the other doing airships and thought, well, we need to get in on the act. But we haven't, I don't think, mentioned America so far. And I thought, given your new office move, it might be appropriate if we had a look at some of the early American pioneers. And really, the United States lagged way behind Europe. So if you cast your mind back, the first airship to fly was Henri Giffard in France, and that was 1852. The first American airship didn't fly for more than 50 years after that, in 1903, in San Francisco. And it's a theme of very early American airship development, that California is the center of it. And the first one was like a little airship. It flew for 40 minutes. Dr. August Greth was the guy who did it, but that was it. He did his one airship and moved on. And then you skip ahead the next year, and a guy called Thomas Baldwin built the next one. And Baldwin was an interesting character. He traveled with a circus as like a balloon acrobat. And I'm not 100% sure what that means. I'm maybe swinging on trapezes underneath balloons or between balloons or whatever it might be. But like a lot of balloonists, he was like, well, how can I steer this thing? So he developed an airship called the California Arrow. Now, the problem that he faced was that he was quite shall we say, a big fellow. And he was so big, in fact, that the first airship couldn't support his weight, so he had to hire a kind of a skinny guy to be the actual pilot of this airship. But that aside, it worked quite well, and he built a second one, and that became actually the first airship bought by the United States Armed Forces, and the only military airship that America had until the First World War.
Here's a picture of it, just so you can show, or one of them at least. I think this is the California area, 1904.
Yeah, that's his first one, I think.
Look at it's actually kind of funny. You can see him right here, and then you can see the much smaller guy that's actually going to be flying in it.
Unfortunately, you're dealing with buoyant aircraft held up by light and their gas. Things like that do matter. We saw Alberto Santos Dumont. He was very skinny and very small. But you've got another weird one out your way, California.
Was this?
Sorry, say again. I accidentally meant to stop sharing, and I hit stop record, but I started it immediately, so we only lost 2 seconds.
Okay.
Yes. So these would all have been hydrogen airships. America was the first nation to adopt helium, but not for a little later.
Yeah. So what's wild is, Bo, what you were sharing there, it's like quilted. It's like a quilted airship, right? And so hydrogen is leaking out of that thing all over the place, right?
Well, I think no, I don't think the bladder is actually quilted, Ryan. I think that there's net over it. That's what you're seeing.
Oh, is that what it is?
I mean, the thing is, you are not wrong. Like these early airships are leaky as hell. But yeah, that netting it kind of attaches the gondola where the pilot is, and sort of like slings it around the
balloon
hull. Yeah.
And let me see if I can get a closer look at it for us.
So that's the netting, and then whatever the bladder is made out of. I mean, if anyone lights up a cigarette next to that thing.
Oh God, I know, it's crazy.
Let's take a little bit of a closer look.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I cannot imagine, the amount that's being leaked, basically, from this. Yeah.
Yeah, and that is a problem that a lot of these early airships had. They just leaked too much gas, and just weren't successful. But you say quilted, Ryan. I mean, that would have been those kinds of techniques that would have been used to create these early envelopes.
Yeah.
A very weird one out of Berkeley, should I say, which I think is a few hours north of where you guys are, isn't it?
Yeah, it's quite a ways north.
Yes. So a guy called John Morrell, I think John Morrell is a hot dog brand in the States. Correct me if I'm wrong. But
just about everything's a hot dog brand in the United States, Nick. I'll tell you.
He was an interesting fella. I say interesting in not a great way. He had this idea, this grand vision of a massive airship that would be in his plans. It was longer than the Hindenburg, so a huge, great thing. And he, in 1907, tried to construct a prototype in San Francisco, but it broke away from its moorings and for hours was flying over the city, being watched by people worried it was going to fall on their houses. He had investors who this was going on for ages, and they were very keen to see some kind of return on their investment. So he thought, well, I've got to do something. San Francisco didn't want anything to do with him after the drifting incident, so he found himself in Berkeley, and he built one of the strangest aircraft I've ever seen in my life. It looks like a Frankfurter, which is why I find it ironic that John Morrell is his name and also a brand of Frankfurter. It was 137 meters long. Now, for context, Pathfinder 1, the rigid airship that's currently flying in that part of the world, is, I think, about 125 meters long. So
Mm.
huge for the time. He built this prototype, and huge pressure from his stockholders who wanted to see something, some kind of action, some kind of activity. So he decided in May 1908 that he was going to try and fly it. The size of this thing, it had 16 crew members on board, 5 people who stowed away on it, and John Morrell himself. But I think it tells you something that the guy who had overseen the actual construction and building of the airship, he refused to fly in it because he said it just wasn't safe and he wasn't prepared to trust his life to this gigantic floppy hot dog.
What was this one called?
He had built. You're looking for the John Morrell airship of 1908.
Yeah, see if we can find a picture.
It's a very strange thing.
Oh, yeah. What in the world? Oh, yeah, this one's fantastic. Hang on 1 second. Come on. It's worth the wait, guys, I promise. Boom.
It's a very strange thing. There you go.
Ryan,
So-
look at this thing.
Man.
This is
I can't believe they stole our design idea. Just kidding. Sorry.
Yeah. That's going to be constructed in your warehouse.
Hey, I can't talk. This is flying. We do not yet have a ship that flies, so I cannot make jokes.
I think flying is a loose term for what happened to it. So this is just after it's taken off on its one and only voyage, and you can already see that it's beginning to sag in the middle. It got to about 300 feet, and then it burst. Basically, the sausage burst. The front of it burst open, and everything in the front just crashed onto the ground. I think there's actually a photograph of it as well. But
I'll find it.
The rear was still afloat for a while because this thing is so massive, and that too eventually burst and came crashing down. I'm amazed that of the 16 crew members, 5 stowaways, however many people are on board there, no one was killed somehow. Morrell broke his leg, and then unsurprisingly, he's been kicked out of San Francisco, and now he got kicked out of Berkeley. They wanted nothing to do with him. His stockholders all sued him, and then he just disappeared. There you go. So that's the rear of it.
Oh, no.
Still aloft, and the front of it's just collapsed.
Yet again, though, no deaths. Airships, honestly, airship history has a pretty good track record relative to. I feel like I have to look this up. I feel like more people died building the railroads than these things.
Oh yeah, almost certainly. But yeah, no deaths. Although I think that's pure luck. You fall out of that thing at 300 feet, it's going to hurt, at the very least.
Yeah, that is insane.
And also, just look at Berkeley in 1908. I think it's a bit different now.
Yeah, seriously. Just as an example, Nick, from distance, I was trying to provide an example for you. Our offices to Berkeley, it's like 430 miles. It's about the same distance from London to Edinburgh.
Okay,
so
cool.
fairly far.
Yeah, quite a long way. That shows how big California is.
Yeah, that was
halfway
my
up.
flex on the UK. It's one state, by the way. Just kidding. No, I'm just kidding.
And yeah, and then let's even get started on Texas and how massive that is. It's crazy.
Oh, it's a nightmare in California too. Don't worry.
Yep.
So those were some early American pioneers who maybe were less successful. But one of my favorite pioneers, and one of the ones who I love this guy. He's a dogged, he's determined, he kept trying. He did have some measure of success, but ultimately he didn't succeed. But he's a guy called Walter Wellman, and he was a journalist and a reporter who became obsessed with the idea of building an airship to reach the North Pole. This was his big mission. in 1905. He started this, and he at the time was a reporter for the Chicago Record Herald newspaper, and he persuaded them effectively to sponsor the construction of this airship called the America. And he had done his research. He had traveled to Paris. He had spoken to Alberto Santos Dumont, and in fact, Santos Dumont was so enthused by what Wellman was doing that he seriously considered joining the team and coming on the expedition to the North Pole. So, as the airship was being constructed in Europe, Wellman traveled to an island called Spitsbergen, the Arctic Circle. It's an island that plays a big role in airship history. A lot of airships that were flying to the North Pole or into the Arctic Circle would call in there, and they built this hangar. And he was going at a very, very fast pace, and he said that that the quote is, where are we? One of my notes. The rapidity of our operations astonished the slow-going people of Europe. So you get the sort of typical stereotype of the Americans hard driving, pushing forward, and the Europeans on their long lunch breaks or whatever it might have been. But I always think maybe he should have listened to the slow-going Europeans, who, to be fair, had been doing this for a bit longer than he had, because the first expedition, which was in 1906, was a complete failure. So it was totally the airship construction was delayed. They couldn't test anything before they went out there. So they took this thing, they shipped it out to Spitsbergen, and they were testing the engines, and they just completely flew to pieces. And of course, by the time you're there, you're doing that test, you're in the Arctic. You've got no means of building new engines on site, so they had to abandon the expedition for that year. But with that said, the airship that he had built, which was called the America, and he rebuilt it several times for the different expeditions, but it was quite a cool piece of kit, especially for the time.
I do have pictures of this, so we can look at them.
Bring it up, because it's...
However, there is an important thing to note before we show these pictures, and it is mustache alert for another airship
I'm
founder.
falling behind on the mustache here.
And by the way, Morrell as well. Mustache alert. Now, I will say that is a little bit short. We're like getting close to problematic mustaches with Morrell. I'll give him a pass because of the time period in which he lived.
Mustaches.
But yeah, you were not flying with this today. No way. This though.
I know. But look
Ryan,
at this guy.
Look at this guy, Ryan. If you do not have a suit and a hat just like this the next time I see you,
wing collar.
Yeah, this guy is an American hero. I can already tell. The ship though is very cool. Look at this. This is very, very cool looking. And I imagine so. This is the island then that you're speaking about, Nick, where they built the hangar.
So that's Spitsbergen. That's the hangar. And you can see, you see just how big this thing was. 50 meters, which I think is just over 160 feet. So big for the time. And it had a weird thing. I don't think you can quite see it in that picture, but it had a thing which hung under the airship, which they called the equilibrator. I've never quite been sure how to pronounce it.
Like a pendulum, like for ballasting or counterbalancing?
Exactly that. It was a weight that was slung underneath it, and the idea was that it would actually drag along the surface of the water or the earth to act as a balance and to basically moderate the airship's height. And it was kind of like a leather tube that they stored food and other bits and pieces in as well.
I think you can see it in this picture.
That's it. There you go.
Yeah, it's hanging down there in the water.
So this is, we'll come to what's happening in that picture, but it was Yeah, it wasn't brilliant. So I would suggest not using an equilibrator for your Floatcraft. The best record. But Wellman was a dogged guy. He was really focused on getting to the North Pole. So he tried again, and he recruited a guy called Melvin Vanneman, who was basically accompanying him on all of his other expeditions. And they went back in June 1907, waiting for the weather to break, and they were there until September. June until September, just waiting for the right kind of weather. And then they got a day. It was clear. The weather broke, and they cast off and flew out north into the Arctic Sea, straight into a snowstorm.
Oh no! Oh wait, so is that where this is coming from?
Yeah, that's going to be it. So zero visibility, icy mountains like in that picture looming straight out of them, and they almost crashing into them. And they thought, well, we can't carry on. We just can't. It's certain death. We've got to pack up and go home. So they made an emergency landing. They packed up the airship, and back home they went. And he still didn't give up. And I just can't help but admire this guy. So he had some time off. He was covering the presidential election campaign, where William Howard Taft won. But the following year, August 1909, he was back again, and they set off. The weather was absolutely stunning this time, and he gazed out at these massive glaciers, at all the icebergs reflecting on the still water of the Arctic Sea. But then the equilibrator fell off, and he saw it. He saw it land in the water. This great technological advancement fell off, and they flew 1,200 feet up into the air, just like that, zipped up. And they had to, again, abandon their mission. You can't carry on with that. Apart from anything else, they lost all their food because it's stored in this thing slung under the airship. So they had to turn back again.
How did they get down?
They would have had to have thrown out all their ballast, basically. Valve hydrogen, rather, to get down, to make the ship heavier. There would have been no other way, because all their ballast had gone. So
yeah, that is terrifying.
I know. Yeah. Crazy.
Once again, just absolute, I don't even know what word to use. It's brave. I'll give him that. It is brave.
But again, brave, or is it foolish to keep coming back for more? I don't know. Well, I guess you get so close, and they made progress every single time. The first time, the engines got shaken to pieces in testing, so couldn't even take off. Then I suppose he took off, but ran into terrible weather, so had to turn back. And then the third time, you actually take off, you make progress, and then your airship starts to fall to pieces. So it's not ideal. And actually, that was the last time that he tried to cross the North Pole, because it's interesting, because they heard that Robert Peary had reached the pole on foot. So their objective was to be the very first people to reach the North Pole. But this guy, another American called Peary, said he reached the pole. It's still controversial, even now, more than well over 100 years later. But that Peary's claim to have actually reached the pole is disputed. It wasn't necessarily him who did that. So they kind of moved their focus from the North Pole, and this isn't the last time that we'll have airships in the Arctic. Some very, very famous missions to the North Pole, with varying levels of success, would happen in the next few decades. But he then focused on something else, something that hadn't been achieved, and actually wouldn't be achieved for some time: the Atlantic Ocean. He realized that his America airship if it was rebuilt, and they built it, they enlarged it from 50 meters to 70 meters, increased the gas capacity, equipped with a radio. Must be one of the very first aircraft to actually have a radio on board, and they slung a large lifeboat under it as well. I think you can see that in the picture that you shared.
Yeah, it looks like they're using the lifeboat. It looks like they're using the lifeboat essentially as the what's the word I'm looking for here? Like that's what they're sitting in as they're flying this thing.
Well, there's
at least in that picture.
There is a reason why they ended up sitting in that lifeboat, but they took off from Atlantic City, 15th of October 1910, and they flew east into the Atlantic Ocean, straight into a thick fog, but heading into the unknown. And again, you reflect on just how brave these people were to head out into the Atlantic. This hadn't been done at all, and also in an airship that hadn't really flown that much either. And Wellman, he wrote a book about it, and I think he was quite kind of realistic about his chances, and also about how sensible it was to do this. He said that we knew we were going to try to reach Europe, and we knew that we had some sort of a chance, but how good or poor a chance it was, we could not calculate. And he said, we knew we were engaged in a difficult and dangerous scientific experiment and adventure, one that was the more fascinating because it was difficult and dangerous. And I really like that sort of summation of the pioneer spirit. It kind of reminds me of Kennedy's speech when he launched the moon program. You know, we do these things because they are hard. That's why you want to do them in the first place. So there was a crew of 6, including Wellman himself, and including Melvin Vanneman, the guy who had joined him on his previous attempts on the North Pole. And they had another member of the team, a cat, who had been a stray cat living near the hangar and had basically stowed away on board, or actually rather he'd been brought on board as good luck. Typical sailors thought that bringing a ship's cat on board would be good luck. But Vanneman absolutely hated the idea of this cat. He thought it was a ridiculous, unprofessional thing to bring a cat on board. And there was this, they took off from Atlantic City. And the first thing that Walter Wellman found that he was dealing with was an argument between 2 of his crew members or whether or not they should take the cat. And they said, well, he said, Melvin, you do what you want with this cat. So there's no animal cruelty, fortunately, involved. But they put the cat in a bag and tried to lower it down to a boat. But by that time, they were too high. So the cat had to come with them. But it was, I think, the first ever radio transmission from an aircraft to the ground, which was Melvin Vanneman calling the mainland, telling them to come and get this goddamn cat.
That's fantastic.
Was that a direct quote?
It is. Come get this goddamn cat as well.
I have a picture really quick here. So this is of the crew. This is the 6 of them. And then an even better photograph is this one.
There you go.
Including the cat, who it looks like its name was Kiddo.
Kiddo the cat. That's the one.
This is like doppelganger from Peaky Blinders here, right?
Yeah, kind of. Yeah, isn't that fantastic, though?
If you go up again to that previous picture.
Sure.
What I want to know is, you got Walter Wellman, he's second from the right. Is that how he dressed on board? I don't know, but I wish it was.
Yeah, well, this was, I
Bow
think we were
ties.
talking about this last episode that we did a recording that, like, the style was just so much, it was so impeccable at the time, and everyone just wore suits all the time. And I just can't help but think about how impractical it is to be wearing, yeah, like a three-piece suit while doing
And a
this.
tie,
Yeah,
whilst
potentially. I mean,
running.
I don't know. I can't tell in the pictures what they were actually wearing. Now, I have the screenshot of we were making reference earlier when we were talking to like a SpaceX documentary, and I have screen grabs of it on my other screen here, and we have all these. Granted, we're talking about space, which is a whole different thing, but everyone's wearing like a jumper, basically like a super fancy jumper, and it's the suit for literally everything is just such a lost
It's
art with the
perfect.
times.
It's
Yeah.
perfect. And even now, you wouldn't get a test pilot going anywhere near an experimental aircraft without everything suited up, proper helmets, all the personal protective equipment you could find, and then these guys in their suits and their watch fobs and their trilbies.
And a cane. This guy has a cane. It's amazing.
It's so cool.
Yeah, it really is. And like a pocket watch, I think, is going on here.
Yep, that's your watch fob. Amazing stuff.
It's awesome. I love it.
So they're out. They got the cat. They're heading into the Atlantic, and unfortunately, it just he didn't have much luck. Walter Wellman. He's very dogged, very determined, but doesn't have much luck. The engine, after only a few hours, one of the engines failed. They can carry on one engine, but it was downhill, and the first night fell, and Wellman had this horrible vision, or this image in front of him when the darkness fell of the one engine that was still running. All these tons, this cascade of red sparks spewing out of the exhaust pipe just a few meters away, actually making contact with the envelope of the airship that contained 10,000 cubic meters of hydrogen, highly flammable hydrogen. So he was extremely alarmed by this, and said to Vanneman, "We should stop the engine. Something's wrong." And Vanneman's like, "Well, no, that's just what it's going to happen. That's what the engine looks like when it's running. And don't worry, because it looks worse at night anyway. And why don't you try and sleep?" And Wellman tried to sleep, but I don't think he got a particularly restful night's sleep. So the next day dawns. This is day 2 of their adventure, and they are now running into bad weather. And the wind is pushing the nose down, and the equilibrator, which seems like a bit of an Achilles heel, is dipping under the surface of the water and pulling the airship itself down, so that at times itself was almost just like a few feet away from the surface of the Atlantic, and they're throwing all the superfluous stuff they can over the side to try and lose some weight, and to keep the airship above the water. And also they're worried about Kiddo the cat, because all this wind, and they're making sure that he is safely tucked up where he wasn't going to be blown aboard. So the cat has become a valued member of the crew by this time.
Has someone done a movie adaptation of this yet?
The whole of the airship story, there are so many of these episodes and incidents which you think, why isn't this a film? But unfortunately not. But
yeah, I'm surprised somebody hasn't done like an indie film of this or something from the perspective of the cat.
Of the cat. Yeah.
That's great.
Seen to Netflix. But this is all going. It's all getting a bit much. And at one point, Melvin Vanneman said, "We should get into the lifeboat. We should abandon ship." And Wellman called a conference, and again, testament to the bravery of these people, that they, as a group, the crew decided, no, we're gonna try and soldier on. But they did. They took the precaution of putting 2 guys into the lifeboat so they could check just how high it was above the waves and make sure it wasn't getting too close. And then when they did get close, they called up to the crew and said, throw more stuff over the side to lighten the airship. and this was day 2 of a trip that they thought would last a week. So I think they kind of knew that the game was up, because the Atlantic weather was bad, but we all know what the Atlantic can be like. It can be utterly horrendous, and this wasn't anything near the worst that they could have had thrown at them. And it was actually the next day, Monday morning, they realized that basically the game was up. They had to abandon the expedition. Apart from anything else, they were throwing their gasoline over the side to try and lighten the ship, to the point where they mathematically had no chance of reaching Europe because they didn't have enough gas. So the closest land was Bermuda, but Bermuda is a tiny sort of series of islands in the North Atlantic. To hit that accurately, where you probably don't really know where you are, having been drifting for 2 days and pushed about by the wind, that's a tall order to try and meet the island. They sort of headed south in the vague direction with a hope that they would see it. Then you've got the sun warming the hydrogen. So Wellman says, let's valve some gas because the hydrogen is being warmed, it's expanding. Let's valve some gas, otherwise we will shoot up into the sky. But Melvin Vanneman valved air, not gas. Air being heavier. So they shot 3,000 feet up into the sky. Had to valve exactly what he was trying not to, valve all this hydrogen to come back down to a sensible altitude. So they've run out of gas, they've run out of ballast, they've had to valve all their hydrogen, and they really are in kind of like the last chance saloon. So then night falls, and Wellman is keeping watch. His eyes are peeled, because they did know, although they're not 100% sure where Bermuda is, they did know that a steamer would have left Bermuda that day. So he's got his eyes peeled in the night, looking for this steamer. And he says that he basically was hallucinating in the darkness. His focus so much that his eyes were sort of drifting, and he said he saw steamers, trains, skyscrapers, and then he would like shake himself and see just darkness out in the Atlantic. But 4:30 that morning, they did spot the steamer, the SS Trent, and the steamer saw them, intercepted the airship, and the men and the cat got down into the lifeboat and crossed over to the SS Trent, where they climbed up onto the deck. But there's a kind of poignant end to this story, because Walter Wellman, basically standing on the deck of this ship, his dreams abandoned, and he stood there and he watched the America kind of drift off east over the horizon, and it never was seen again.
That was going to be my question, is what happened with the ship? So it's gone. It's in the ocean somewhere?
Yes. And
wow.
in his book, he wrote a kind of little farewell, and he said, "Thank you for the noble comrades and rare experiences you have brought me, for the lessons you have taught us. You played your part in the game of progress. In the years to come, many aircraft will cross the Atlantic, and you'll be honored as the ship that showed the way." And that was the end of his aviation career. But there are a few postscripts, one which is rather sad and one which is quite sweet. The sad one was Melvin Vanneman, who tried again a couple of years later. He tried to take off to fly across the Atlantic. They took off again, Atlantic City, in July. His entire family turned out to watch them. But minutes into the flight, the hydrogen caught fire, the airship exploded, and all on board sadly lost their lives. And it wouldn't be until 1919 that the first airship would actually fly across the Atlantic, the R-34. But the nice
so just really quick, that puts a huge damper on the no deaths in the history of airships thing. We ran out. ran out of luck, it sounds like.
Sadly, yes.
Which is very sad. Yeah. And sorry, go ahead, Nick. I do want to hear the positive.
Well, the positive was Kiddo the cat. He was renamed Trent after the ship that had saved them, and he became a celebrity. He lived for a while in a department store in New York City where people come and see him. But at the end, he retired to live with Walter Wellman's daughter. So he had a long and happy life as a celebrity cat.
That is lovely. Okay, so there is some positive. But yeah, it does seem as though there tends to be a... what's the word I'm looking for? A lot of these stories are so like either triumphant or close to triumphant with really like magical endings in a way. Even in the failures, the endings are tending to be kind of like magical moments, and then with tragedy mixed in, which is just, I understand why you love the history so much of this space. It's beyond the technology. Like yeah, beyond just the technology, because from our perspective with Float, like we're looking at it not strictly, but like we got into this because we fell in love with the idea of the technology, and what it could be used for, without even really knowing, admittedly, this history, of course. And so I the more I learn, the more I understand why you and others have fallen in love with it.
Well, there's a certain drama, I think, and also all these crazy bonkers people doing crazy bonkers things. When I stumbled across Airships as a 9-year-old, I was just hooked by all this. And you know what? The moustaches help as well, because you think, who on earth is this guy with this crazy moustache in this crazy aircraft doing insane things? But yeah, Walter Wellman is someone who I rather like. He wasn't successful, but he was a visionary, and he was a proper aviation pioneer. And he did actually end up having a World War II Liberty ship named after him in 1944. So I think that's quite a decent testimony. And I hope that Liberty ship would have crossed the Atlantic. So in some ways, he did make it eventually.
Yeah, I was going to say not successful in that specific venture, but I don't know that I would say it was totally unsuccessful in the end.
Not at all. And all these people had to try these things in order to inspire the people who come after.
Yeah, exactly right. We wouldn't be doing any of the stuff we're doing had these pioneers not done what they did, right?
No, exactly that. Exactly.
So wow, that's amazing.
That's
a
our
good
history for today.
Yeah, that's a great place to stop. As per usual, I am very much looking forward to hearing what comes next. This is why I love doing these every week. I mean, on top of, checking in with you, talking about the happenings within Float and the airship industry in general, I love learning the history. It really is amazing, and we appreciate your expertise.
My pleasure. And I'm not 100% sure where we're going to go next week or next episode. There's a few places.
We have time to talk it over, and I'm always open to bouncing the ideas off of. And well, I knew what would happen is we're gonna run into the point where you haven't done like a bunch of like maybe deep dive and like chronologically the next topic, and so we'll do it as a group. It'll be great.
That's true. I'll get to a point. Actually, World War One is the point where the first season of my podcast stops. So
we're butting up to that right now, basically, in a timeline.
Yes. Yeah, and also it all takes a little darker turn as well.
Sure.
Of World War One, it is interesting. It starts to become less sort of jolly and a bit more of a kind of production line, horrible bombing missions in the freezing cold, people being killed, people dying. It does take a dark turn, but
Sure.
There's still so many incredible stories to tell.
Oh yeah, no, we'll absolutely dive into them, and you know what? It's part of the history, right? I mean,
exactly.
It happened. Well, I'm very much looking forward to it. In terms of news this week, I know you and I kind of touched base on this. There wasn't a whole lot, that happened. You know what that means, actually? The biggest news in airships this week was Float's new office. We were the biggest news in airships this week. We have a new office space. which we're very excited about. And, we'll keep updating everybody. We're working on getting some clips for the docuseries together so you can follow along with us. One cool thing that came out of the new office is, we'd mentioned that the space we're in was previously part of Saleen, which, are you familiar with Saleen, Nick? So
No, I'm not sure whether maybe they haven't traveled to Europe. I'm not sure, but
yeah, so they are a supercar manufacturer that was really, really popular in the early 2000s. So let me just show you the S7 was like their, I think it came out in 2005. But then they've also done, like, if you're familiar with Shelby, so Thomas Shelby's Peaky Blinders. I'm totally blanking on his name. Oh my goodness, why?
Car designer.
Yeah.
Carroll Shelby.
Carroll Shelby. Yeah, wow, I should really know this. Carroll Shelby. Yep. So you're familiar with the Ford versus Ferrari story. He, was the designer for Ford. He then started the Shelby Motor Company, which went on, and they made like specialty versions of Fords. So there was like the Shelby Mustang, a lot of people will be familiar with.
Okay.
Saleen was founded by this gentleman by the name of Steve Saleen, who was a racing driver himself, and kind of did a similar thing where he was making performance versions of other cars. So there's actually a Saleen version Mustang as well. They've done it's all American based cars. They've done like a Raptor F-150, and then in 2005 they made their flagship supercar in-house called the S7, and I believe they won Le Mans with this car.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so let me see. Just want to see if I can figure out, well, whatever, it's not super important, but yeah, I'm almost positive they won it a couple times. But the reason I'm mentioning this is because we did get to pop over to their facility the other day and check it out and talk to them and see them building a couple of these things by hand, which was really crazy because you'll see, they have the body work that they're doing. It's kind of all framed out, and then they have every part laid out, waiting to by hand be put into the vehicle, which was
not a production line. Then they're
they're doing it by hand individually. Wow. Yeah, and I think for the cars that they do in conjunction with the other brands, like the Mustangs and stuff, I think they said they do like 250 a year or something like that. But then for these, there's only 2 that they're building right now. So, and they like a 7-figure price point for the buyers, definitely, which is really, really crazy. But yeah, it was cool to see what that actually looks like. I mean, you hear about, Rolls-Royce and some of these other brands that exclusively build their cars by hand. And then when you see it in person, it's like, holy crap, like every piece from the ground up is being installed by hand. It's wild.
So on the street your office is on, you've got a supercar manufacturer, and now you've got an advanced high-tech airship manufacturer.
Yeah, that's right.
That's quite cool.
That's right. Yeah, it worked out pretty well. So we're hoping to, maintain great relations with them, and who knows, this maybe down the line. I said that we need to pick up one of their supercars, with the Floatcraft and use it for marketing for both of us. But we'll see if that actually comes to fruition. I'm not 100%. Sure. If it's up to me, it will, but we'll see.
Yes.
Awesome. Well, Nick, thank you very much. I know we lost Ryan. I think he had to jump into another meeting, but no worries. We will be back. We will be back next week. And if nothing else, thank you so much, as always, for your time, man. And to all the listeners as well, we appreciate it, as always.
Absolutely. Always a pleasure.
All right. Well, I'll talk to you soon. Take care, Nick.
Take care. Bye-bye.
You're listening to Float on Air. Lift off. Float on.